Okay, please fill me in.
The breakdown of the Seagull video was Overwatch isn't fun anymore, ladder's a coin flip, and there's a lot of things wrong with the hero design as of late.
Mm-hmm.
And then right now they're talking about how ultimates feel overwhelming to play against.
Uh-huh.
And then what they talked about before was Brigida specifically, but how hard counters overrun just soft counters. How we remember like the old McCree Reinhardt matchup when the Ryan would try to tilt his shield the right way and McCree would try to stun him. He was using that, and he was using Widow v Fair in comparison to the fact that you can have an Overwatch League Tracer here, and if they have a Masters Brigida, the Tracer still has to switch.
That's fine, because my issue with the whole thing is that that's not the core of the problem, and the core of the problem is that mindset that they have of unwinnable situations based on what people have picked. So prepare yourselves. So we heard so now that was a great summary. And this is going to be a really hodgepodge thrown together cut of everything we're going to be discussing and going over here. But for the most part, it is the people in competitive who come into the game with that mindset of, oh, we have a Torbjorn, it is impossible to win, might as well just play Sim or whatever, and then they stop trying. They have such a low threshold for trying to figure out the game and play around it. Like, honestly, the core of these thoughts here, obviously as more of a one-trick player myself, but not even playing a super off-meta hero. I'm playing d.va. d.va, the hero that was played in, like, what was the stat, Rosie, in the Overwatch World Cup? Like 99% of games? 95% of games?
Her pick rate was 98%.
98%. Now, like, pro meta versus competitive solo queue meta aside, like, d.va is good in most situations. And I will still be the source of people's hate just because I appear to be unable to swap. That said, the only games that I end up losing are the ones where people aren't communicating and don't want to try to figure it out, don't want to work together. So my issue with Seagull's whole analysis of it all is not, like, he's spot on. Like, honestly, I'll agree with what he said as far as the hero design. I think that there can be a lot done to change the way you get, seemingly so hard countered. But then at the same time, that's a very shallow view of it, because, for the longest time, if you take that same approach, Mei should just never have been a hero, because Mei wins every 1v1. That's bad for the game. And that's been understood then for a long time, that the way you counter that, the way you play around that, is just by having better teamwork. Overwatch is a team-based game at its core, and it will be impossible to take 1v1 situations or single heroes and try and balance them in a vacuum. You can only balance things around a sort of medium power level that everything kind of revolves around. But at the end of the day, the team that works better together is going to end up winning. Like, I can't tell you how many times. I mean, it's all on record. Like, if you look at the videos that are on my channel of all the games that I have won, playing like 4 tanks, 5 tanks, 4 supports, solo tanking with d.va with 4 DPS and a Mercy, like all kinds of ridiculous stuff, winning with attack Sim and attack Torb. And for context, this has been playing at like 4200, 4300 SR, like the exact ranks where, like, I'm getting matched in with all the other top 500 and pro players. It's not like the games that end up being complete blowouts or unfun are the ones where people either A, show up and say, oh, this is unwinnable because people don't want to try, or B, start off by not communicating. And this is where I think the core problem is. Even with teams that have super bad comps or just aren't playing meta heroes, whatever that may be in any given period of time, if everyone is in voice and actively trying to win the game, trying to figure stuff out, trying to make plays, trying to coordinate ults, letting each other know what they're doing, calling for help, coordinating attacks, and I can go on and on about all the ways you can use voice. If people are actually using voice, heck, not even talking, just listening, they're in voice, hearing the calls that are being made and playing around that, I win like 90% of those games. The games that end up getting lost are the ones where people don't start off in voice, where you have someone who never joins and just continues to do their own thing, where you have people who only use voice to complain and make negative comments about how things aren't working and why certain other things are the problem instead of trying to do something about it themselves. Like, I think the core of the problem is communication, and or rather the lack thereof. And something I felt very strongly about for a while now is, you know, if people don't want to use communication in a team-based game, Overwatch is, more than anything else, a game about working with your team. You cannot do anything on your own at a higher level. Heck, any level, if you're working with your team, you will simply have an advantage. I honestly don't think there should even be an option to not join voice. And I know this is something that a lot of people disagree with me on, but why is it an option to not play half the game? Like, you're only playing the game for yourself if you're not joining voice. There's no way that you could convince me that not being in voice is better for your team, even if you're not talking. I'm not saying you have to talk. You don't need to have a mic, but you have headphones or you have audio or you're throwing even harder. Like, you should be forced to be able to listen to comms, but still be able to mute people individually. Like, yeah, okay, there are going to be people who are just not helpful or are going to be obnoxious. Mute them on an individual basis, but starting by putting yourself at a disadvantage and thereby putting your whole team at a disadvantage, that is the most concrete example of throwing that I could give on a regular basis. Is just people who are not participating in the team-based aspect of the game. So I don't know if I was able to get my feelings across there, but like, to me, the biggest problem in Overwatch is that lack of communication. That not, like, people don't talk about that, but that's really, like, when people have a fun game, like, even if I end up losing these games where everyone's in chat, everyone is having a good time and talking it up, trying to figure out what to do, those games are fun. It's the ones where no one tried to do anything, or everyone's just silently playing away on their own, trying to do their own thing. Those are the games that Seagull is talking about. And it kind of goes hand in hand, because a lot of the people who are just not going to be in voice are the people getting criticized for the stuff that Seagull's talking about, you know, not swapping or playing, making bad picks. But I think more so than them being the problem, it's the people who are calling those people out and making it a toxic environment that are causing more people to back out of communication. Adding on to that, I mentioned earlier the action of being chat banned, or not action, but like the consequences of being banned in chat, not being able to then communicate with the rest of your team. Time for another unpopular opinion, but if you're getting chat banned, you should just be completely banned. All you've done, all Blizzard is doing by chat banning people is making them a guaranteed throw because they can't communicate anything. And I can think of a lot of times where, you know, it's your Anna or your Mercy who, you know, is just not in voice, and they're practically throwing the game because they can't tell you when there's a Tracer or a Genji on them. You can't play the game at a high level without a mic. And I know this won't apply to every rank, but at least the ranks that Seagull's talking about, and where I have my experience, you know, up around GM and higher, people not in voice throw more often than people who don't swap. Just to wrap it up, I feel like that needs to be changed. If someone is being toxic enough and abusing voice and communication enough that they need to be chat banned by Blizzard, they're probably not the kind of person you want on your team anyways, as far as trying to win the game. Solution wise, what could Blizzard do to try and make Overwatch a better environment if they're focusing on this more than anything else? They could look at expanding the in-game call-out system, make it easier, or I mean, heck, you could even get callouts that let you highlight some part of the map instead of just group up to the individual. Try like be able to throw a temporary marker on a map somewhere that your team can then see and rally to. That'd be a great way to help promote team play, more varied strategies. there's just so many things around the communication structure of a team-based game like Overwatch that really don't seem like they all work towards the same goal. Like having group chat for your time in quick play, sure, but like in competitive, cordoning off your communications so that they only affect a part of your team, that just doesn't seem productive for anyone. So again, just having everyone in voice, sure, mute the people who are problematic, or be given the, I mean, you just mute everyone and then not talk if that's what if that's what you want to do. But it's the people who are going to do that anyways, just mute everyone, not participate in voice. Those are the people who aren't playing the game the way it's meant to be played and are going to be causing people the most problems. Let's open it up. I'm going to scroll through Twitch chat. And then, well, not much in Twitch chat just yet. So, I have a few friends in Discord who are going to offer some opinions. Anyone have any thoughts on what I said? Challenge my arguments. Sonata?
Okay, how did you know it was gonna be me?
Well, I just figured you'd have something to say, so go for it.
But if your comment is that if people are toxic, just mute them individually, do you think the game design of Overwatch helps cause toxicity? They talked about how when you don't have a scoreboard, when you don't have a way to accurately tell how good your teammates are doing, with other than a kill feed and having to play way more.
Oh yeah.
Play, do you think a scoreboard would help mitigate the toxicity?
So
in Overwatch?
I completely skipped over that because I was focused much more on just that whole mindset of, oh, people who don't swap are throwing and how that causes problems. But yeah, I this is something I've thought about quite a bit. So having a scoreboard that lets you see how well your teammates are doing, sure, the positive side of that, if you're doing a great job or someone is doing a great job, you can see that they're doing a great job. But at the same time, you're going to see when someone isn't doing a great job, and that's going to make a very toxic environment for that individual or few individuals who aren't perceived to be doing enough. And there's too much to Overwatch to quantify it all with a scoreboard. Especially considering the way play at a higher rank can look, where as a Reinhardt or a D.va, sometimes doing less damage is a good thing. And you can be that Reinhardt that has, 30 eliminations, but has also died 10 times. You can have gold medals like crazy in all departments, but you're still losing the game. You can't tell how good someone is doing from their stats. So as much as I would love to be able to see how my teammates are doing, because sure, I'd be able to show off that I'm doing great. At the same time, if you're not doing well, that's just going to feel worse. And focus everyone's attention on the one or two people who aren't doing well. And then the people who you'd be wanting to prove that are not helping anyways, those people who may be one-tricking Symmetra or Torbjorn or whatever the undesirable team members pick would be, you really think that that's going to help you point out to them that they should swap? I don't see how that's truly going to help anyone. And Blizzard has talked about this before, giving basically the same reasons that I did, or rather I was giving the same reasons they did. As much fun as as great an idea as it seems, I think the downsides are too heavy for the game to bear. Like, you can't create a way to focus negative attention on people like that. I mean, the direction they've moved in already, which I don't necessarily agree with completely, like hiding profiles. That's another thing. Like, if I had to, I completely forgot. If I had to sum it up, the people who I think are like 99% of the time guaranteed to be throwing or doing something that's not with the team's best intent and goals in mind are the people who are A, not in voice, and B, have a hidden profile. Like, have you ever seen that work out to be something good? So, I mean, yeah, for the most part, the whole idea of the scoreboard, not great. It's not, or at least it's not clear-cut on which way would be good or not.
Well, yeah, like, you're gonna have some toxicity regardless, because it's going to be a matter of flaming the off-meta pick when you can't tell, or knowing the off-meta pick's doing more, then you flame the on-meta pick for, well, being bad.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's got to be balanced, that's all. I guess I should talk a little bit about how, I mean, the game design aspect of it. And I did touch on it a little bit beforehand, but as, you know, sure, there are certain picks that counter other picks, but even in the example of Tracer and Brig, the team that has better coordination will still win. The team that coordinates better. Now, like, sure, if you're taking this, if you take all that for granted, that both teams have everyone in comms and are both playing at a very high level, and all the teamwork and coordination is there. So now we're talking like pro level, or I would say like that would have to be like 4,300 and up. More often than not, you still get people who just aren't in voice and aren't contributing as well as you'd expect. Like when you get to that level, at the very top of the game, we're talking the top 1% of the player base. Yeah, make a swap. But then the other thing is, too, you probably don't get to that rank if you're not swapping.
Well, Seagull has come out and said his video talks specifically about ladder experiences, excluding that upper tier of play.
Yeah, yep.
So, and it's part of the issue of the design is when the presence denies the ability of counterplay. It's like when you run Monkey into a Doomfist, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
He's just like, well, I guess you have to play something else so you don't get to have fun this game. Is that a fundamental issue in the design of heroes when counter picking overwhelms counter play?
But again, though, he's talking about that at only the highest level, or what?
He's talking about that excluding pro play.
Excluding pro play. So just ladder in general? Yeah, so I don't want to be talking at all about pro level play. I'm talking about ladder. I would say still, like, even up to the highest ranks, even though someone may be getting countered, there's other things that should be focused on first. Like, okay, so game design wise, is it a good idea to have heroes that can outright just counter people? That's a tough question, because I feel like there are two aspects of Overwatch that have been hotly debated, or one aspect, and it's broken into two parts. Overwatch, for some, is considered a game where you pick your favorite hero and just play that hero. And that's, I think, absolutely fine. Obviously, I play basically just d.va. Then the other people play it in its totality and play it like a giant game of rock, paper, scissors, swapping picks, trying to get the most advantage, until we can decide which one of the two ways to play Overwatch is the right way to play. Like, Blizzard has said things on both sides of that argument where, yeah, to an extent, it is about like that whole counterplay and interplay between heroes and that whole meta of the game. But they've also said that they don't want to take action against people for one tricking, or at least that's not really an offense unless it's done in a disruptive manner. So without a clear answer there, I don't think we can say whether or not it's a good or bad idea to have heroes that are, you know, strict counters. And again, I don't believe that these heroes that are all mentioned, stuff like Brig or like, you know, what other examples were there? So Brig versus Tracer, Doomfist versus certain tanks. Like, I don't think that they are as much of an issue as he's making it out to be. Like, the way you counter it would be the same way I would say to counter a Mei. Like, you don't engage her 1v1, and or you can focus her first, or focus whatever the problem hero is first. The reason it feels so horrible is if your team that is supposedly has the person who's getting countered doesn't decide to focus that counter pick. Like, I still think that teamwork is the answer to any of these situations. Now, whether or not it's still too much of a counter to it, like whether or not one hero still counters another hero too much, I do agree with like how bad it feels to have as much CC as there is, and I think the recent Brig change is going to be really good for that. taking out most of people's big frustration and the recent Doom nerf. So I feel like opinions may change as we go forward, but yeah, I don't think it's as big a problem as is thought. Like for the longest time, people had always said that like Zarya, for instance, countered d.va. Like that's something I had to live with and got called out on for a long time. For all of that, there's still ways you can play around it and make a difference in team fights. Like it's even in the case of Brig and Tracer, like sure you're less effective, but you can still dance around the enemy team and force them to play more defensively, which your team can take advantage of. And like the problem before was that Tracer could do too much. I think Tracer is like still fine in that matchup. You just can't play her the same aggressive way. You want to be working more with your team, like being a part of a team effort rather than doing as much solo damage as you would have in the past. And I think that's really what the changes brought about, or what the goal is with Overwatch, is like any hero taken in a vacuum seems really, really strong. It's when you get a coordinated team, like you can take, like it almost doesn't matter what kind of comp you have. If your team is communicating and doing well, you can more often than not pull through bad situations. The problem now is that the predominant view of the player base is exactly, what Seagull has talked about in this whole feeling of helplessness when you have someone on your team who appears to be countered or appears not to be doing anything well. I still win more of my games than I lose, and I think it's due to the attitude I take towards games where I approach every situation as winnable. Like I'm talking even to the extreme of, oh, someone on my team left. I try to encourage my team and get people together and we go like, come on guys, all right, we can still do this. We just gotta pull off, this next ult combo. We're all gonna get together. We're gonna make something happen. By being positive, by trying to bring people together, you can have. You're able to do so much more. There are two aspects of it. So the reporting system has helped clean things up on one front of it. That's great. But now the kind of throw that we have, like on a daily basis, on an almost every other game basis, is just people not wanting to play the game. Like they just stop and don't care. And I think this is why I have such a big problem with Seagull's mindset and saying that Overwatch is going down the tubes and something needs to be done. Like, sure, there are things that need to be done that could make the game better, but when you get everyone believing that, that's what's going to kill a game. Is when you get the most devoted players in the game playing at the higher ranks to believe that certain games are just unwinnable. That's what's making things unfun. There's always something you can do. I don't care what the counter picks or counter plays are. There's something you can try and something different you could do to try and figure it out. It's when you start believing that it's unwinnable, that there's nothing you can do, that it's not your fault, that it's someone else on your team that's the problem. Those people who start believing all that stuff are usually the ones that end up throwing my games. Like 100%, those are the people who I would accuse of throwing, not the people who show up and are one-tricking. Usually, if you're one-tricking at a given rank, you're going to understand how to play your hero better than most people flexing would understand how to play any given hero. And if your team plays around you, you'll have a great asset. Teams that I've had where I've ended up with an attack sim, some of the first things I'll be doing are making sure that figure out how they want to use their teleporter, for instance, what their plan is on helping the team move around the map, how they're going to call stuff out, try and play around them as best you can. Like that's the best you can do. And I end up winning those games at like just as often as I would win a normal game. So I understand what Seagull's saying, but it's so dangerous to take that mindset of, oh, this is just unwinnable. It's not my fault. It's someone else's fault. That encourages people to not try, to not care. I'm not saying necessarily, to to sum up my thoughts on that, I'm not saying necessarily that Seagull is completely wrong, but it is just such a bad way to think about not just Overwatch, but like life in general. Like anytime you go into something with that kind of pessimistic attitude, you're setting yourself up for a bad time. You're less likely to have fun, and you're more likely to cause your team to lose.
How do you think this varies because you're a d.va main, which is picked 98% of the time, versus, say, we'll go with the Tracer example, or, say, a Torp main?
Yeah.
It's going to be a lot more vulnerable to criticism.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Haha, I'm played in almost every game.
Maybe it is better in my case because I actually do swap if my team asks me to, and there's like a productive reason for it. Like, not just that, oh, this is a bad pick, you have to swap. Like, if there's been a good given effort and something isn't working out, I do end up swapping. I'm not, like, a complete one-trick anymore. And if you look at a lot of the top one-tricks who are accused of being, accused of causing all these problems, a lot of them do have other playtime. And if you talk to them, and I've gotten to know some of them, Sim and Torb one-tricks both, like they will swap for their team if they're asked really nicely, but they're also not like completely leaving themselves out of voice a lot of time. At least the better ones aren't. So in my situation, I feel like I get it just as much as others would. Maybe a little less because I'm in voice and still trying to figure things out and trying to communicate. But I'm not immune to the people who believe that all one-tricks are bad and just are counter to the game. And this goes back to that whole debate over what Overwatch is as a game. Is Overwatch about you playing a hero you like, or is Overwatch about playing rock, paper, scissors with the heroes? I don't think it's either. I think Overwatch is a team-based game, and that is the focus of it. Overwatch should be played first and foremost to see who is the better team, who is better at playing with a team. That's what solo queue is. That's what the ladder is. It's which team. It's not which individual. It's which team can beat the other. All right. So I'm going to take a moment now and scroll through some of Twitch chat because Headley, thanks for showing up. I'm going to read through here. So you forget the fact that he said your team is against you most of the time. If you are a Tracer, there's going to be that one dude looking at you all the time, and that Tracer has that big pressure on his or her shoulders. This happens every game. Get off, Tracer. Yeah, and that problem, that focus on that one person on your team being the problem, rather than you yourself figuring out what you can do to help fix the game, to help make it better, to help give your team a better chance of winning. That's the problem. Like, outright, like, believing that someone else is the problem rather than that there's something you could do, that is what causes the game to spiral out of control, causes people to start throwing, causes people to leave early. If you believe that there's something you can do, you're going to have a much better time. Yeah, feeling helpless is bad, but I don't believe there are very many instances of team comps where you'll be absolutely helpless to do something. So there are a lot of studies that have been done. I can't cite any sources. But if anyone has like even taken Psych 101 in school or done any basic reading, not to mention the fact that it just kind of makes sense. People who have an external locus of control, that means they believe that things outside of themselves determine the outcomes of their life and the things that happen to them, and that there's nothing they can do about them, are gonna have, statistically speaking, a less successful time in their life. Like they're just not going to be as successful. And then the people who are at the top of the world, financially, politically, socially, academically, they're the ones who believe that there is always something they can do. They don't feel hopeless. They look for solutions. They try to work things out. They try to figure things out. And they do the best they can to improve themselves, to make up for the problems that they've located within themselves. They're not blaming the world. They're blaming themselves. And I think as a whole, like this is just me now bleeding over some of my personal philosophy. If people in general took more ownership of their actions, their contributions, what they're doing, and who they are, the world would be a better place. But bringing it back down, if people first looked at what they were doing and what they could do and how they are affecting the game, tried to make changes there first, Overwatch would be a better place.
So on to a different topic we discussed in the video. How would you alter Doomfist, Sombra, Brigida, most notably, so that it's less of a counter pick and more nuanced?
All right.
How would you change the hero? Something Surfer brought up as having a charge up time, like in Battle Right, where you can kind of feint out abilities so that a Tracer can try to counterplay against it. There was some talk about changing the way Doomfist's abilities interact. What would you like to see done so that these heroes are more counterplay and less counterpick?
I think the biggest change, well, the biggest changes have already been made. It's reducing the instances of uncontrollability. So in Doomfist's case, they reduce the amount of air control he gets out of his uppercut on people. That's going to give people the ability to dodge and or respond with abilities more quickly and more reliably. So basically, making him have to get closer now in order to do stuff, I think that's plenty for Doom. It doesn't one-shot people now, right? Or no?
I do not believe so. No?
Okay, well, that would be the one thing then I would definitely change, because I don't think he needs to have a one-shot combo at all. Like, that's something I don't think is healthy for the game. So with Reinhardt charge, Reinhardt pins someone, that happens slowly enough, and usually it's easy enough to predict and see and dodge, and there's so much downside for the Reinhardt that I can accept that that can get one-shot kills if the Reinhardt's willing to put himself, like, basically deep in the enemy team and then kill himself. But with Doomfist, he can get in and get out with almost no risk to himself, like, before the other team can react if he gets off a good punch. So that's something that I would think would be a good change. Or maybe make him have to charge it up for even longer in order to get that kill or that same amount of damage. So Brig-wise, not being able to stun through barriers sounds great. They already increased its cooldown. Maybe increasing the reach, like decreasing the speed at which her shield recharges. That might be a change that they could look at making. But otherwise, I think there's a decent amount of counterplay to Brig as it is. And with the new change to not being able to bash through shields, that should be a very, very good change.
Do you think ultimates are too powerful?
Ultimates. The direction they moved in when they decreased the charge rate of every ultimate at one point, this was many seasons ago. I agree and think that there should be ultimates less frequently. They should be valued more for how powerful they are. Don't change the power level. Leave that the way it is, but use them less often. Yep.
Would you say there are some heroes who are too easy to play for the value they give?
So, for instance, speaking from my personal experience, the way that you can play D.va successfully at low ranks fairly easily just by walking around and doing damage to people and having mobility to engage in your matrix to block damage. That's pretty simple and pretty easy. But then there's so much more you can obviously do with her at a much higher level with the way you can with better tracking, be able to dive, more advanced targets, shall we say, and get more value out of your ultimate and whatnot. Like that's great. I mean, sure. So we're talking about Brig specifically, who's incredibly easy to play for her maximum value. Yeah, I could understand that feeling bad. Make her so basically the perfect solution would make Brig harder to play at a lower rank, but maintain her effectiveness at higher ranks to an extent. The only thing I could think of doing that would be making her damage less consistent or in some way require more skill, giving it a smaller hitbox so it hits fewer things, make it more aimed, make it so it doesn't do piercing damage, it only hits one thing at a time. It's tough to say, but yeah.
So what about her heal being instant and requiring literally zero aim? Because that's one of the heaviest complaints I had pull up a window clip talking about how the fact that she doesn't have to aim and she can overheal instantly.
I think that's fine because overall she still does less healing output, and it requires her to be, in order for her to be getting her maximum value, she does have to play with quite a lot of risk to herself. At lower ranks where you don't have coordinated teams, I see how that can be a problem. Again, my solution would come back to just, you know, teamwork solves the issue here. So the focus shouldn't be on that one hero being the issue, but rather the team that's not trying, that doesn't understand how to fix the problem being part of it. Something else, while we're talking about all this, there's this huge misconception that you should be winning all of your games. With the way the SR system and competitive is designed, it's designed to find the rank at which you will win 50% of your games. All right?
I mean, I really agree with the whole, you know, team morale thing, because I do have a lot more fun. I'm more successful in things that I do when I enjoy the people I'm playing with, because, I mean, Trapper knows, we've had awful throwers in games that were supposed to be really, really good. We had perfect team comp and everything, and because one person didn't want to contribute or follow with direction, everything went downhill real fast. So it is a big problem. I don't see how it can get fixed, honestly. That's something that has to happen with the community itself. And a lot of the community is just a bunch of stubborn children or stubborn adults that don't want to change their viewpoint on things. But that's my opinion.
Cool. Thank you. I'm going to wrap it up there. When this is on YouTube, I want everyone to let me know what they think in the comments. Do you agree with me? Like, should we be focused more on making the team environment a better place? Should we care more about what we can do as individuals rather than what other people shouldn't be doing? Or should we focus on the negative aspects of it? Sorry, I don't want to make it so like clear cut, like it's just obvious that what one side is better or not. Like there's a debate to be had on both sides, but I just feel so strongly that you're better off and will have more fun if you focus on what you can do and approach things with a positive attitude. Get some old PMA in there, positive mental attitude.